Hey everybody, it's Zach from Magic Man Games, and welcome to Behind the Madness, your source for Magic the Gathering tips, tricks, and tidbits. Today we got deck tech for you, a new legendary from Theros Beyond Death. It's Thassa, Deep Dwelling. This show and others on our channel are supported by you guys, the viewers at home. If you want to support the channel, easiest way to do so is to like and share the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the little bell so you get notifications of when new videos just like this one go live. Another easy way to support the channel is to use our TCG Player affiliate link, tcgplayer.magicmangames.com. Whether ordering just a few cards or full decks like this one, using the link has no extra cost to you. We just get a little bit of a kickback, which really helps us out. You can also support us directly by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/magicmangames. Last thing, we also stream Magic weekly over at twitch.tv/magicmangames live, starting right around 7 p.m. Central every Thursday night. This deck tech is one of the decks that I'll be playing on stream, so I hope you get a chance to stop by and check it out. All right, and with all that out of the way, let's get to our deck list, and today we've got a good one. It's Thassa, Deep Dwelling. It's a legendary enchantment creature, one of the new gods from Theros Beyond Death. It is 1 blue and 3 colorless. It is the 6/5 indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, Thassa isn't a creature. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Also has a quick 4 mana ability to tap another creature. Though I have yet to use that, it can come in handy in some respects. So with Thassa, there's a lot of different ways you can take this. With mine, I decided to make the main mechanic being to draw the deck to win. With Thassa's Oracle, Labratory Maniac, and Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. With these three, basically the idea is that you want to draw your entire deck and win by having no cards in your library or having a really high devotion to blue to win with Thassa's Oracle. Kind of an interesting idea. You know, with Thassa, you can kind of flicker everything, and you get a chance to really utilize a lot of those enter the battlefield effects to help draw out the deck. There is a couple other secondary win conditions because nothing ever goes to plan. So the kind of the backup win conditions are to either mill out your opponents or just to outvalue and steal all their stuff. With Thassa, I've seen a lot of people play it as the steal everything mechanic, and personally, I just prefer something a little bit interesting or a little bit different. So that's why I went with this. For strategies for milling out your opponents to win, Psychic Corrosion, Altar of the Brood, Folio of Fancies, and Jace's Archivist are 4 kind of ways that help do that. Psychic Corrosion is an enchantment that whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills to. Well, if you're going to be drawing a lot of cards, that's really going to mill out your opponents quickly. Altar of the Brood is whenever another permanent enters the battlefield, they're going to mill. And with everything kind of leaving and entering constantly, Altar of the Brood triggers happen a lot more often than you would think. So Altar of the Brood is actually an amazing include in this deck. Folio of Fancies is one where you can just draw a bunch of cards, and you can use it to mill out your opponents equal to the number of cards in hand, and you can force everyone to just draw a bunch of cards. Jace's Archivist is a wheel effect that helps get into it and make things discarded that way. All right, so then going to the outvaluing and stealing everything, my kind of main thoughts were like Kiora bests the Sea God. It's the new saga that gives you just a massive amount of value. Also, Agent of Treachery and Mass Manipulation to steal things and gain control. Agent of Treachery is a great one in this because with Thassa's Flicker ability, you're just going to constantly gain control of things all the time. So those are kind of the main strategies that I had to win. Now let's get into some of the main kind of engines that keep things going. And of course, starting off, we've got, you'll notice that this deck is very wizard central. So we have a couple of doublers and things because we're also abusing all those enter the battlefield effects. So we've got, of course, Panharmonicon and Bon, Dean of Iteration. These two are going to just straight up double ETB effects from wizards and other creatures entering the battlefield. You'll notice, like I said, a lot of ETB effects in here, so these definitely help stack those up really quickly. We also have Stronic Resonator, which allows you to copy those abilities. Now, they're triggered abilities, so there's other things that you can copy as well, which can really get this deck going like very, very quickly. And also, Deadeye Navigator is one that helps kind of get the whole train rolling. Deadeye Navigator has Soulbound, so when it enters, you Soulbound with another creature, and then you can flicker those constantly. Okay, so those are the main engines. Then we move on to our draw. So Cloud Concealer and Muldrifter allows you to basically ETB draw cards. Now again, with the flicker effect, you're able to draw a lot of cards quickly. Pondering Mage on ETB, you get to ponder each time, which can be very, very valuable to get cards that you don't want off the top of your deck. That shuffle is always helpful. I've used it several times already playing this deck. Augur of Bolas allows you to just get extra stuff from the top of the deck because you get to put it right in hand. Sage of Fables, as each creature enters the battlefield, or each other wizard enters the battlefield, they enter with a 1/1 counter. You can pay 2 to remove a counter from a creature you control to just draw a card. Azami allows you to tap, untap wizards you control to draw cards, which again, being that a lot of things in this deck are wizards, you're more likely going to have them. You can tap them to draw constantly. Gadwick the Wizened is another new one from Eldraine. This is a powerhouse in this deck. It's got a multi-purpose. You can sink a bunch of mana into it to draw a lot of cards if you have open mana. But the main thing is whenever you cast a blue spell, you can tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Being that this is a mono blue deck, you're more likely going to be casting a lot of blue spells quickly, and you can kind of use it to control problem targets on board for your opponents. Okay, so then we move into our control aspect because we got a lot of ETBs that help kind of control and manage the board. Because again, with your main mechanics being trying to draw yourself out or mill your opponents out, sometimes that can kind of go to the late game. So you want to be able to have things that can kind of manage your other opponents on board. So the first thing is tapping creatures. Again, Gadwick helps with this, but you have Merfolk Trickster, Watertap Weaver, and Tempest Caller, each having different types of enter the battlefield tapping creatures that your opponents control. Some of the counter magic, we've got Void Mage Husher, Narrow Mayhem Master Wizard. We also have things that align with that steel theme. We have Willbreaker and Diluvian Primordial. Willbreaker says whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes a target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature as long as you control Willbreaker. So targeting your opponent's creatures with stuff, you can easily gain control of creatures that way. Diluvian Primordial, on ETB for each opponent, you can cast up to 1 instant or sorcery from their graveyard without paying costs. It also exiles the spell after you cast it, so that can help sway with the fact that you're going to be milling a lot in the process. You're usually going to hit some big massive spell that's really good for you that you can just cast for free, and with the ability to flicker it with Thassa, you could potentially get up to 6 massive spells off of your opponents just the turn that you play it. So great included in this deck. Then we move to things that search and return stuff to our hands because there's a lot of things that we're going to want to cast over and over and over again. So first off, we have Trinket Mage, which allows us to search up artifacts with CMC 1 or less, and you'll notice that we have a couple of key artifacts in this deck that are one of them being Altar of the Brood. That's one of our main mill strategies, so Trinket Mage can go fetch it. We've also got Archaeomancer, Snapcaster Mage, and Torrential Gear Hulk. These on ETB allow us to cast instant or sorceries or return them to hand. We do have a lot of instant and sorceries in this deck that we would like to be able to cast over and over, so this helps us do that. Then we also have Overwhelmed Apprentice. It's a 1-mana 1/2 that ETBs mills your opponent's 1, but then you scry 2. So the scry alone is useful being a repeatable effect, but getting that extra little benefit of milling your opponents, again, when you're trying to do that as like a kind of a backup win condition, that definitely contributes to that and is, I feel like, a decent include in this deck. Then we move on to some of our instants and sorceries. These are our counter package because we want to make sure we can protect our board and slow down and make sure that our opponents don't do anything too quick that we can't answer. So we're running a good handful of counter spells. We have, of course, Counterspell. We have Reality Shift, which is a good way to exile a problem creature. You also have Wizard's Retort, which, because we're playing a lot of wizards, this is just basically another copy of Counterspell. Then we have Force of Negation, Thassa's Intervention, and Ashiok's Erasure. Actually a very, very good card because it's also an enchantment. Sticks around for Devotion. Then moving on, we also have Whirlwind Denial, Swan Song, Mystic Confluence, and Narset's Reversal. All of these are great. Mystic Confluence having the added benefit that you get to do a couple of different things, being either counter, bouncing creatures, or drawing cards. So with the counterspell package out of the way, now we move on to our kind of, again, our main plan of drawing. We've got a bunch of spells that help draw. So we've got Blue Sun, Zenith, and Stroke of Genius that are just draw X spells. Then we have a couple of different ones like Frantic Search, Treasure Cruise. Those are to just draw a few things at a time. Windfall is another one that's great in this deck because you get to force everybody to discard their hand and then draw cards equal to the greatest number. Dictative Crewfix is another enchantment that forces everyone to draw extra cards, which can be useful for you, but also it kind of does have the downside of giving your opponents extra cards. But at the same time, if you're forcing them to draw or you're forcing them to mill, that's just another card out of their deck that gets you one step closer to that plan. And Dictative Crewfix is also an enchantment, so it sticks around and counts for devotion as well. For utility stuff, we have Flood of Tears for board control, and Stolen Goods and Reigns of Power for some of that theft mechanic again. Flood of Tears returns all land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 or more, you can put a permanent back on the field. So it's not quite as harsh as Cyclonic Rift. So Flood of Tears is an interesting kind of different way of doing that. Stolen Goods and Reigns of Power working on that theft mechanic. Stolen Goods allows you to exile cards from the top of the library until you hit a non-land card. You can then cast it. Again, Stolen Goods can help with that mill mechanic because it's getting cards off the top of their library. Reigns of Power allows you to basically swap creatures with another opponent. That can either allow you to flicker something with Thassa and then you keep what you stole from them. Or the other thing too with Reigns of Power is if somebody has a problem creature and another person has a way to deal with it, you can force, like you could swap boards and then attack into somebody else who has a death touch creature or something like that that has a way of dealing with it. Then we drop into other instants and sorceries. Mission Briefing and Bond of Insight both work towards that mill mechanic and draw out mechanic. Then we have Omen of the Sea, which is a new enchantment from Theros, Beyond Death, and it's a very popular enchantment for a good reason. It is a 2-mana flash enchantment. On ETB, scry 2, then draw a card. You can also pay 3 and sack it to scry 2 again. The scry alone is great, but the ability that you get to scry, then draw for 2 mana, and it sticks around to count for your devotion, which is useful in this deck. It's an incredibly good card for that reason. We also have another useful devotion-based creature, Caliphate, Beloved of the Sea, the mono blue demigod from the set. Power is equal to devotion to blue, so there, as you can tell, there's kind of a lot of enchantments and things that want to stick around to give devotion. It also helps protect your stuff as it gives creatures and enchantments you control spells your opponents cast that target it cost 1 more. And then we have a couple of enchantments that are some interesting enchantments. First one being As Foretold. 3-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on it. On each turn, you may pay 0 rather than paying the mana cost for a spell you cast with CMC X or less, where X is the time counters. Now, one thing that's interesting about this is it says on each turn. So it's not just your turn, it's every other person's turn at the table. So you get to cast something for free if you can flash it in or cast an instant or sorcery. You basically get free stuff all the time. And this is an enchantment that a lot of people tend to target because they're not sure what's coming. So even if you put it down, it can be just a threat that people want to waste their resources trying to remove. You also have Mirror Maid, a new enchantment from Eldraine. ETBs is a copy of another artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. So this can target your own stuff or something else that somebody else has that you can use or want to basically get a copy of. Then we come to a couple of 1-mana things. Of course, we have Sensei's Divining Top, which allows you to look at the top cards of your library and draw them if needed. And we have High Tide, which is an instant that basically doubles all islands. Whenever they tap for mana, they tap for double until end of turn. Then we go into our ramp and mana rocks, Mana Vault and Soul Ring. They're also 1 mana, so they can be tutored up with Trinket Mage if you need or want them. Also, we have Nyx Lotus and Altar of the Pantheon. Nyx Lotus, of course, taps for your devotion. So again, having a lot of devotion is good for this deck, as well as trying to interact with Thassa's Oracle. High devotion allows you to just have some very explosive turns. Altar of the Pantheon increases your devotion, as well as allowing you to tap for extra mana. And if you have Thassa or Caliphate, you gain a little bit of life out of it. So definitely kind of good synergizing card for this deck. Then we move into the mana base for this one. This one's relatively straightforward. We have Temple of the False Gods and Ancient Tomb, both of which tapping for 2 colorless. Then we have Thespian Stage. Thespian Stage is an auto-include in most of my decks. Reason being is Thespian Stage targets any land, which includes your opponents. So if your opponents have something that's interesting in there, Thespian Stage is a good way to grab it. Thespian Stage is a very interesting land, and its uses are just great. That's why I like to put it in most of my decks. Moving on, we have Blast Zone, which allows you to more board control and board wipes if need be. Then we have Castle Vantress and Mystic Sanctuary out of Eldraine. Castle Vantress allowing you to scry, Mystic Sanctuary allowing you to return instants and sorceries. Both of those are very useful, and especially with the fact that we're playing a lot of islands in this deck in general, Mystic Sanctuary, as long as you don't play it turn 1 or 2, more than likely you're going to have enough to cover it. Then we also have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, again, working with devotion and being in a monocolored deck. This can produce a lot of mana very, very quickly and allow us to have some really explosive turns, or again, dump into those X spells to really boost the deck. Last one is Karn's Bastion. Now, this one allows you to pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. Now, this one's not going to have a ton of uses in this deck, but it does interact with a few specific cards in general that I felt was enough to warrant its inclusion in the deck. The things that it interacts in particular are As Foretold, allowing you to put more time counters to getting those free spells quicker, or just higher CMC free spells. It also works with Sage of Fables, because Sage of Fables puts 1/1 counters on everything. So doubling up some of those 1/1 counters can be incredibly useful to making your creatures big enough to be a threat, or just to give more stuff for the card draw, to give more fodder for the card draw. Follow that up with, of course, 25 basic lands to round out the deck. That kind of concludes this deck tech. If you want to see this being played, again, we stream live Thursdays over on Twitch at twitch.tv/MagicManGamesLive. This is a deck that I will be playing on one of the upcoming streams, so hope you get a chance to stop by and take a look. Otherwise, we are going to be posting some of the replays of that soon as well. Also, if you want to order the full deck that I've got and covered here, I'm going to put a link to a TCG Player deck list in the description below. You can find that, and that's our affiliate link. So if you order the deck through that affiliate link, again, we get a little bit of kickback, and it helps out the channel. Otherwise, if you want to order specific cards to kind of fill in your own Thassa deck, again, using our TCG Player affiliate, tcgplayer.magicmangames.com. That affiliate link helps us out and supports the channel when you order cards. It's no extra cost to you, help support the channel. We really do appreciate it. And that's it for this episode of Behind the Madness. My name is Zach from Magic Man Games. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll hope to see you again next time.